James Brown walked into the rehearsal studio at exactly 9 a.m., as he did every single morning without fail, and found his bass player wearing platform shoes with actual living goldfish swimming in the clear plastic heels. Not metaphorical goldfish, not decorative goldfish painted on the shoes. Actual living, breathing, swimming goldfish in clear acrylic heels that Bootsy Collins had somehow acquired overnight and decided were appropriate footwear for a professional James Brown rehearsal session. Brown stopped in his tracks, stared at those shoes for a full 10 seconds of complete silence. Every other musician in the room froze, instruments in hand, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "What?" Brown said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet, in that way that everyone who'd worked with him knew meant serious trouble. Bootsy Collins grinned widely, completely missing the warning tone, completely misreading the situation. "These are my new stage shoes, Mr. Brown, revolutionary footwear for revolutionary bass playing. I got them custom made. The goldfish represent the fluidity of funk music. They're a statement about how bass should flow like water. Pretty cool, right?" Brown's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He took a slow, deep breath, visibly trying to control his anger. "Take them off, or get out of this building. Right now. This is the James Brown Band. We have standards, we have professionalism, we have a reputation to maintain, and we do not wear circus costumes to rehearsal." The grin faded from Bootsy's face. "Mr. Brown, these aren't circus costumes. This is artistic expression. This is innovation. Isn't that what you brought me into this band to do? To innovate, to push boundaries, to create new sounds and new styles? I brought you here to play bass guitar, to follow my arrangements, to be part of a disciplined, professional organization. Not to turn my band into a sideshow with your ridiculous fashion statements and your oversized ego." What happened in the next 72 hours destroyed a mentorship that had revolutionized funk music, created a rivalry that would last decades, and taught both men painful lessons about creative control, artistic freedom, and the price of refusing to compromise. It was early 1971, and Bootsy Collins was 20 years old. He'd been playing bass in James Brown's band for less than a year, but in that short time, he'd helped create some of the funkiest music ever recorded. His bass lines were revolutionary, deep syncopated groove that pushed funk into new territory. Brown had recognized Bootsy's talent immediately and had brought him into the organization specifically to innovate, to push boundaries, to create new sounds. But Bootsy wasn't just a bass player. He was a personality. He wanted to dress wild, act wild, be wild on stage. He wanted to wear platform shoes with goldfish in them, and star-shaped sunglasses, and clothes that looked like they'd been designed by someone on psychedelic drugs. He wanted to be more than a sideman in someone else's band. He wanted to be a star. James Brown, on the other hand, had very specific ideas about how his band should look, act, and present themselves. Everyone wore matching suits. Everyone had their hair styled the same way. Everyone followed strict choreography. Everyone knew their place. Brown was the star. Everyone else was support. That's how it had always been. That's how it would always be. The tension had been building for months. Little things. Bootsy showing up to rehearsal in clothes that were too flashy. Bootsy improvising bass lines when Brown wanted him to stick to the arrangement. Bootsy getting too much applause from the audience. Bootsy acting like he was special instead of just another member of the band. The goldfish shoes were the breaking point. Brown pointed at the door. "If you want to wear circus shoes, join the circus. This is a professional organization. We have standards, we have discipline, we have a reputation to maintain. Those shoes are a joke, and you're not wearing them in my band." Bootsy looked at Brown like he'd been slapped. "Mr. Brown, these shoes are an expression of my artistic identity. They represent innovation and creativity. Isn't that what you brought me here to do, to innovate? I brought you here to play bass, to follow arrangements, to be part of a team, not to turn my band into a sideshow with your ridiculous costumes and your ego. My ego? Mr. Brown, with all due respect, you're the one who can't handle anyone else in this band getting any attention from the audience. You're the one who has to be the absolute center of everything, every single moment. You're the one who treats grown professional musicians like we're children who can't think for ourselves. I've been playing bass since I was 12 years old. I know what I'm doing, and these shoes are part of my artistic identity. The room went completely silent. Every other musician in that rehearsal studio froze in place, some of them actually holding their breath. Nobody talked to James Brown that way. Not ever. Not in 15 years of running this organization. Especially not a 20-year-old kid who'd been in the band for less than a year, no matter how talented he was. Brown's voice got very quiet, very controlled. The kind of quiet that was far more frightening than yelling. Get your things and leave this building. You're fired. Defective immediately. You're done in this organization. You're seriously firing me over a pair of shoes? I'm firing you over your attitude. The shoes are just the symptom of a much bigger disease. The disease is that you think you're bigger than this organization. You think you're more important than the collective. You think you're special. You think the rules that apply to everyone else don't apply to you. I've built this band over 15 years through discipline, hard work, and maintaining standards. And I'm not going to let some kid with a bass guitar and a pair of stupid goldfish shoes destroy everything I've created. You're not letting me destroy anything. You're destroying it yourself by refusing to evolve, by refusing to change. Music is changing all around you, Mr. Brown. Funk is evolving every single day. The audience wants something new, something different. And you're stuck in 1965, acting like nothing has changed. Like you can just keep doing the same thing forever. That's exactly why you need players like me in this band. Because we understand where music is going. We understand what the next generation wants to hear. Get out. Now. Right now. Before I have security physically throw you out of this building and ban you from ever setting foot in it again. Bootsy grabbed his bass guitar case with shaking hands, looked at James Brown one final time, with a mixture of anger and heartbreak on his young face, and walked out of the rehearsal studio. As he reached the door, he couldn't help himself. He shouted back over his shoulder, "You're going to regret this decision, Mr. Brown. I'm going to be bigger than you ever imagined possible. And someday you're going to wish you'd treated me with respect instead of like I was disposable." Brown watched him go without expression, and then turned calmly to the remaining band members, who were all standing frozen, shocked by what they just witnessed. Anyone else want to challenge my authority? Anyone else in this room think they're bigger than this organization? Anyone else want to wear goldfish shoes and talk back to me? No? Good. Excellent. Let's get back to rehearsing. We have work to do. But underneath the calm exterior, Brown knew the damage was done, and it was significant. Bootsy Collins wasn't just any bass player who could be easily replaced. He was genuinely revolutionary in his approach to the instrument. His playing had given James Brown's recent recordings a fresh, innovative sound that was attracting younger audiences who might otherwise have dismissed Brown as old-fashioned. Losing Bootsy was going to hurt the band's sound, hurt their appeal to younger listeners, and hurt Brown's reputation for having the best musicians in the business. Bootsy, for his part, was absolutely devastated by what had just happened. He'd idolized James Brown since he was a child, had dreamed for years of playing in his band, had learned so much in the past year about groove, about timing, about professionalism, about what it meant to be a serious musician. And now he'd been fired over a pair of shoes and his refusal to be completely invisible, to have no personality, to just be another interchangeable part in Brown's machine. He went home to Cincinnati, feeling completely defeated, moved back in with his mother who tried to comfort him, and spent 2 full weeks feeling sorry for himself, questioning every decision he'd made, wondering if he'd just destroyed his entire musical career over a pair of stupid shoes. Then, something happened that changed absolutely everything and redirected the entire trajectory of his life. George Clinton called him out of nowhere. George Clinton was leading 2 revolutionary bands simultaneously, Parliament and Funkadelic, and they were creating the wildest, freest, most psychedelic funk music anyone had ever heard before. They didn't have rigid rules about matching suits or synchronized choreography. They actively encouraged personality, individuality, creativity, weirdness. They wanted musicians who were genuine characters and personalities, not just invisible sidemen playing notes. They celebrated what made each person unique, rather than trying to make everyone identical. "I heard James Brown fired you over some goldfish shoes," Clinton said, laughing. "His loss is absolutely my gain. I want you to join Parliament Funkadelic. I want you to be completely yourself without apology. Wear whatever shoes you want. Play whatever bass lines you feel in your soul. Be a star. Be weird. Be free." Bootsy joined Parliament Funkadelic in March 1971, and his entire life transformed almost overnight. Within 6 months, he'd become one of the most recognized and celebrated bass players in all of music. He wore those platform shoes with actual living goldfish in them on stage every single night. He wore star-shaped glasses that became iconic. He created an entire persona called Bootsy Baby that was part musician, part cartoon character, part alien visitor from the planet Funk. And the music he created with George Clinton was absolutely phenomenal, even more innovative than what he'd done with James Brown. Bass lines that were revolutionary in their complexity and groove, songs that pushed funk music into space-age psychedelia that nobody had imagined before. Live performances that were more like theatrical productions than traditional concerts. James Brown watched all of this from a distance, watched Bootsy become famous and influential, watched him grace magazine covers and influence a new generation of bass players, watched him create a lasting legacy. And Brown felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel: genuine regret. Not regret for firing Bootsy. Brown never regretted maintaining discipline and standards, but regret for how he'd handled it. Regret for not finding a way to channel Bootsy's creativity while maintaining organizational structure. Regret for treating a talented innovator like he was just another replaceable sideman. 3 years later, in 1974, James Brown and Bootsy Collins ran into each other unexpectedly at a music industry event in New York City. They hadn't spoken a single word to each other since that devastating firing in the rehearsal studio. The first few moments were intensely awkward. Both men standing there in a crowded room, neither one completely sure what to say or how to act. Finally, Brown spoke first, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "I've been watching what you're doing with George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. It's good work, genuinely innovative stuff. You're making a real impact." "Thank you, Mr. Brown. That means a lot coming from you. I learned more from you than you probably realize, more than I appreciated at the time." "You still wearing those ridiculous things?" "Different goldfish now. The originals died in 1972, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm still wearing them on stage. They've become kind of my signature thing." Brown almost smiled, a rare expression on his usually stern face. "You know why I really fired you that day, right? It wasn't actually about the shoes themselves. I know. It was about control, about maintaining your absolute authority over your organization, about not letting anyone challenge you or your system. I understand that now, in a way I didn't then. I was 20 years old and thought I knew everything. You were right about one important thing, though. Music was evolving all around us. I was holding on to the past too tightly, refusing to adapt. I should have found a way to let you be creative and innovative within my structure, instead of just shutting you down completely. Instead, I pushed you out and lost something genuinely valuable to the organization. And you were right about something too, Mr. Brown. I was cocky and arrogant. I was 20 years old and thought I knew everything about music and life. I didn't respect what you'd built over 15 years. I didn't understand that discipline and structure are actually important, not just creativity and freedom. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Bootsy asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd figured out how to work together? If you'd been more flexible and I'd been more respectful?" Every time I hear one of your bass lines and realize that could have been on my record instead of George Clinton's. Would you have let me wear the goldfish shoes? No, never. Some things are non-negotiable. Then we never would have worked, because I'm never taking these shoes off. Brown nodded. Then I guess we both made the right choice. You found a place where you could be yourself. I maintained the integrity of my organization. It worked out for both of us. Did it? Or did we both lose something we can't get back? Brown didn't answer, because he didn't have a good answer. Yes, they'd both been successful after the split, but they'd also both lost something. Brown had lost an innovator who could have kept his sound fresh. Bootsy had lost a mentor who could have taught him discipline and longevity. They'd both chosen their paths, and both paths had led to success. But there was always the question of what might have been. In the years that followed that initial reconciliation conversation, both men spoke about each other frequently, in interviews, in documentaries, in conversations with other musicians. Brown always acknowledged Bootsy's immense talent and revolutionary approach to bass playing, while simultaneously criticizing what he saw as Bootsy's lack of discipline and inability to function within a structured professional organization. Bootsy always credited Brown as an absolutely crucial influence in his development as a musician, while simultaneously maintaining that leaving Brown's band was completely necessary for his growth as an artist and as a human being. The narrative became increasingly simplified over time as journalists and music historians tried to make sense of what had happened. Young creative rebel versus old authoritarian mentor. Student leaves teacher to find his own path and his own voice. A tale as old as human civilization itself, repeated endlessly throughout history. But the reality was far more complex than that simple narrative suggested. Both men had been completely right about some things and completely wrong about others. Brown had been absolutely right that organizations need structure, discipline, and clear hierarchies to function effectively. He'd been wrong to think that creativity and structure were mutually exclusive, that you couldn't have both innovation and organization. Bootsy had been absolutely right that artists need genuine freedom to express themselves authentically. He'd been wrong to think that freedom meant ignoring all rules, all authority, all structure, all discipline. In 1992, more than 20 years after the firing, James Brown was asked directly about Bootsy Collins in a comprehensive Rolling Stone interview that was examining his entire career and legacy. "Do you regret firing him that day?" "I regret how I handled the situation. I don't regret the actual decision to let him go. Bootsy needed to leave my organization to become who he was genuinely meant to become, and I needed to maintain strict control of my organization to keep doing what I did best. But I wish we'd parted on better terms. I wish I'd taken the time to tell him that his talent was real and valuable and important, even if his goldfish shoes were absolutely ridiculous." Have you told him that now? No. Why not? Pride, I guess. Same reason he's never called me to say I was right about some things too. That interview prompted Bootsy to reach out directly. He called Brown's management company and asked if they could arrange a conversation. Brown agreed without hesitation. The conversation that followed was surprisingly brief, considering how much history existed between them. Bootsy thanked Brown sincerely for the training, the discipline, the professionalism he'd received during his time in the band. Brown thanked Bootsy genuinely for pushing him to think about evolution and innovation, even if he hadn't been ready to hear it at the time. They agreed that they'd both been young and stubborn in their own different ways. Brown stubborn about maintaining control, Bootsy stubborn about demanding freedom. They agreed that the music they'd created together, brief as their collaboration had been genuinely important and influential. "I'm never wearing matching suits," Bootsy said with a slight laugh. "I'm never allowing goldfish shoes in my band," Brown replied with equal humor. "Then I guess we understand each other perfectly now." We always did understand each other. We just had fundamentally different definitions of what mattered most. You valued freedom and individual expression above everything. I valued discipline and organizational structure above everything. Neither of us was completely wrong. Neither of us was completely right. They stayed in occasional contact after that reconciliation. Not close friends exactly. Too much history, too many differences in their approaches to music and life. But not enemies either. More like two people who'd learned crucial lessons from each other and then moved on, carrying those lessons forward in ways that shaped and influenced the rest of their careers. When James Brown died in 2006, Bootsy Collins released a public statement that was widely quoted. "James Brown taught me that discipline and excellence genuinely matter. That showing up on time matters. That rehearsing until you get it absolutely perfect matters. That respecting the music matters. I fought against those lessons when I was 20 because I thought they were about control and power. Now I understand. They were about respect. Respect for the music. Respect for the audience. Respect for yourself as an artist. I'm grateful for what he taught me, even though I had to leave his organization to fully understand and appreciate those lessons." If this story about mentors and students, about creative freedom versus organizational discipline, and about how sometimes the right choice for your life still involves genuine loss and regret, moved you deeply, share it with someone currently navigating the difficult tension between following established rules and being authentically themselves. Subscribe for more deeply moving and inspiring stories about relationships that profoundly shaped music history, even as they fell apart. And remember this important truth: you can be absolutely right about what you need for your life and still genuinely regret how you got it. Personal growth and artistic development sometimes require breaking relationships that genuinely mattered to you.